we had two kids off to college and one still in high school at home. And for no apparent reason, Deb at 53, healthy, fit, athletic, had a severe stroke. It stopped us in our tracks. Um, we both are kind of optimists, and hard work and determination tends to fix things. So for 3 years, that was Deb's life, was being the most, as many therapists called her, the most energetic and persistent patient they had ever had.
Welcome to Grief, Gratitude, and the Gray in Between podcast. I'm your host, Kendra Rinaldi. This is a space to explore the full spectrum of grief, from the kind that comes with death to the kind that shows up in life's many transitions. Through stories and conversations, we remind each other that we're not alone. Your journey matters, and here we're figuring it out together. Let's dive right in to today's episode. Let's start with a quick disclaimer. This podcast includes personal stories and perspectives on topics like grief, health, and mental wellness. The views expressed by guests are their own and may reflect individual experiences that are not meant as medical advice. As the host, I hold space for diverse voices, but that does not mean I endorse every viewpoint shared. Please listen with care and take what resonates with you. Today on the podcast, I have not one, but two guests. I have Debra Meyerson and her husband, Steve Zuckerman. Debra is a former Stanford professor. She wrote a book in 2019 titled Identity Theft, Rediscovering Ourselves After Stroke. And now she co-authored with her husband, Steve, a second edition of Identity Theft, and it launched this year. So looking forward to chatting and also talking about the nonprofit organization that they have called Stroke Onward as well, and finding out about their journey. So I'm looking forward to getting to know you both. So thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for having us.
Thank you. So let's start with your journey. What happened in 2010 that led to now your stroke, Debra, and then the impact it had on your lives?
Steve.
You want me to help?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, in 2010, life was great. Deb was 3 years into a new tenured position more than that, 7 years into a new tenured position at Stanford. I was building a nonprofit in economic justice. Our three kids, Danny, Adam, and Sarah, were doing great. It was life was humming.
Yeah.
We had two kids off to college and one still in high school at home. And for no apparent reason, Deb at 53, healthy, fit, athletic, had a severe stroke. It stopped us in our tracks. We both are kind of optimists, and hard work and determination tends to fix things. So for 3 years, that was Deb's life, was being the most, as many therapists called her, the most energetic and persistent patient they had ever had, thinking that with access to good care and enough hard work that we would get back to life as we knew it. But health had other plans for us.
Yes, and I had 3 years after my stroke, the dean of the ed school the had other plans. I love the dean. the medical leave is up, and I am searching for the next uh, uh, searching for the next challenge.
Yeah, I think it just, as much as the dean wanted to extend Deb's medical leave, school policy wouldn't allow, and she had to give up her position. And that really, we sometimes refer to that conversation as the second trauma, because
Oh,
it
yeah.
was when we had to face the reality that this wasn't something we'd be able to push through and get back to life as we knew it. And it triggered what we have come to call Deb's identity crisis.
Yeah.
Who am I now? Um, and Deb, being Deb, didn't just lay down. She said, "Well, if they tell me I can't be a tenured professor at Stanford, I'm still feel like an academic. Aphasia or no aphasia, I'm going to write a book. Damn it!"
Yeah.
And that ended up being a 5-year writing process and a real learning journey for us about kind of the whole idea that after a trauma like stroke that creates life-changing disabilities, you really have to remake yourselves. You need to reclaim your identity, rebuild your identity if you want to have a rewarding life. And that was kind of our 5-year journey in the book writing process.
In the first book. Well, when you said that aspect of not only the identity, of course, yes, here you are a professor, and then you do not have that identity, which you had been there for how many years at that point? Deb, how many years had you been?
22.
20,
Yeah.
22
In
years,
and out of
25 by the
different
time.
academic positions for 25 years.
Yes. Wow. So for 25 years, that had been your life. And then all of a sudden, that's gone. And a lot of times, something that we don't even realize is that grief that there is in these changes of identity, and identity being a huge part in different chapters in our lives when we go through different life transitions, like even when we become parents, there's an identity shift there, right? That's even there can be some grief. In this case, when people also go into retirement, they also sometimes go through an identity change there and grief there. And in your case, this happened earlier on than what you would have wished, of not having then this job that really defined a lot of who you were. I love that you took the bull through the on the horn. How do you say that term? That I'm really bad with.
Bull by the
By the
horn.
Yeah.
horns, by the horns. With Spanish, I end up sometimes using those like
Yeah.
words that kind of the tie, not the right. I don't say the little sayings properly. You took the bull by the horns and you decided to continue doing what you loved in the way that you could now and adapting to that. And you had the support of your husband. And then I want to hear, how was it then also for the kids adapting to this new change, and then yeah, how did you all kind of adapt to the new roles you were all now playing?
The 5. It's I had I am so trusted, and and I am so trusted, even though 15 years since my stroke. Um, the kids are really good. My one of the one of the problems that we are grandparents, the 1 year old, and we we have the two of the kids are married, and one is not engaged, sort of.
Close.
Yeah, yeah, and we had really a lot of, since my stroke 15 years ago, it's so interesting. In the one that my daughter is high school sophomore, and the other two kids are in college.
You want me to
Yeah.
jump in?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the chapters in the book is stroke as a family illness, and we talk about the fact that it impacts everyone. But I think the thing that we really learned even more is it doesn't just impact their lives and our relationships; it impacts their identity too, and that everyone has this identity shift. And I mean, we could do a week's worth of podcast with you to talk about all the stories that they tell and we tell. Super quick on each kid.
Oh, please. I want to hear, because I'm really curious, because yes, like, because no longer now they are also caretakers. It shifts the role of the child now as a caretaker rather than the mother, right? Being the mother. So I really do want to hear about that.
The 2 weeks ago.
Yeah. So one of through our nonprofit, one of our kind of signature programs is something we called stroke monologues, which I think of as kind of TEDx for stroke survivors and their families and medical professionals. And we held a couple of performances in the Bay Area 2 weeks ago, and Deb gave a monologue and talked specifically about that, the changing role of a parent, and particularly with her disability of aphasia, the sense frequently that she can't be the parent that she wants to be. And yet, if you think about parenting differently around the disabilities you have, you still can parent very effectively. And so it's not an identity that she needs to lose. It's an identity she needs to rebuild in a slightly different way. And Adam, our middle son, also gave a monologue at this event. And he talked about his experience of, at times, because of impatience and frustration in Deb's speech, not including Deb in a conversation that he might have included her in before, but then realizing how that was his loss and he needed to change how he interacted with Deb in order to give her the appropriate space to be able to be the mother that he still really wants and needs. And so it was sort of both sides of that changing relationship. And Sarah, in the book, in that chapter on family, Sarah was a sophomore in high school when Deb had her stroke, and in her senior year, she gave a talk to her entire small school community about her experience and how really it changed her understanding of what it means to be strong. That she kind of was like her mom, tough as nails, fully independent, no, I don't need help. But then because she started seeing her mom out of necessity, letting people in and letting them help her and showing her vulnerability, because shortly after the stroke, Deb didn't have a choice, that Sarah started to allow her friends in and share what she was going through and the strength she got from that. And so here, 2 years after the stroke, for a 17-year-old woman, she kind of went through a learning process that she probably never would have gone through. So we kind of hate the expression silver linings, but you do try to find, like, where are the good things that happen out of an unequivocally bad situation. And might Sarah have achieved that personal growth at some point in her life? Maybe, but not at 17.
Mm-hmm.
So the relationships change in difficult but also sometimes very rewarding ways.
I could, as you see, I'm like tearing up hearing all this. It's just so moving, and just everything that you said regarding with, for example, with Sarah, with learning that strength doesn't come from not needing or asking for help. That strength, that there is strength in vulnerability. Like there's, I think, a Brené Brown book, I think, called something like that. Um, and really that, yeah, it is, vulnerability doesn't mean weakness, right? It's like to be able to be vulnerable and know when you need help, and asking for help is strength. There is strength in that. And yes, the silver linings component, I I think that when people in the midst of the grief say something to somebody like, well, at least XYI, this, this could have happened, then that doesn't feel that good. But when you see it in hindsight, like what you just did right now, of the people that your children are now, the adults that they are now, because their life experience did lead them to maybe see life differently, right? Because of what happened. And you grow and mold yourself around those things. You always have a choice as a human being of what you do with circumstances in your life, right? And they chose to take these moments as opportunities of growth. Yes, we don't know who we would have been in any of our lives, right, had things not happened, but it is what is present to you guys now, your organization, to the books that you're doing, are all these gifts per se that came out of something so hard and challenging. And it's just beautiful to see that it's like that it happened not just for you guys as a couple, that you are just together, but as a family. It's just very inspiring, so thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, and I think what you said is really important, that as a survivor or a family member or a care partner, giving yourself the space to look back and see that there are good things, not that you're glad it happened, but that there are good things, and embracing those is so different than, one of the things we've really tried to learn from the people around us who have been particularly effective at supporting us is, what does really good support look like?
Yeah.
And often, or almost always, it is not that sugary positivity. In fact, we've embraced a phrase, because I can be, not in that way, but just I can suffer from something that we now call toxic positivity.
Yes,
Um,
I do.
and yeah, being optimistic and being positive in general as a worldview is a pretty good thing, but not in every moment. And when somebody's really struggling and somebody's really grieving, trying to positive them out of it is usually a bad idea.
Yeah.
So
Yes, thank you. Deborah, share with us, what were some of these ways in which your friends supported you in a way that was not this toxic positivity? Can you share an anecdote that you remember of one of your friends, of how they were there with you, with just as who you are, and honoring that journey and the hardship of it?
The Cam, uh, um, 8 months ago, 8 months after my stroke, Kim flew down to Palm Springs to the Anne's birthday party, and it's Kim helped me in the contact the really lot. Uh, we really a lot. We
I'm going to help.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think the story is in the book, but one of Deb's lady friends, girlfriends, was turning 50, and they were doing a trip down to Palm Springs and urged Deb to come. And Deb was like, no, I'll be too much trouble. It'll be too hard. It'll be too frustrating. And this really close friend, Kim, basically just said, Deb, you need to live. I will be with you side by side. And Deb, of course, said, yeah, but then you won't have any fun. And Kim said, I don't care. I want to do this for you. So she was just 100%.
Yeah.
I'm here to support you,
Yeah.
so you can do whatever you can do and not whatever you can't do.
Yeah.
And sort of very strongly convinced Deb that she should go. And it was sort of a turning point for Deb. It was about 8 months, I think, after the stroke, for Deb to get out, away from me, away from family, with friends, and allow a friend to really be there for her in an unambiguously supportive way, and not saying, oh, Deb, it'll be just like it used to be. No, it's going to be different. But that's good. That's okay.
And I danced.
Yeah.
I danced a lot.
And so it was sort of kind of one of the first really moments of joy in what had been a really shitty 8 months.
Yeah.
So amazing. Yeah. So now, because now the way that you have to express yourself has shifted and changed. So do you feel, you just said you danced a lot that time. Do you feel that now you're just like what you do and how you express yourself, since it's harder for you to be able to, let's say, talk right away over like a joke or something like that in the scenario, when you're interacting with others, what is the way that you kind of show that you are engaged in that conversation or in that moment? Like what has changed with that?
A lot.
Let me talk.
Yes, it's so difficult and frustrating and days and frustrating. It's once a day or 2 times a day. So
frustrating.
Yeah.
2 times a minute.
Yeah.
I think your question about how do people support us well. One other story. Another very, very close friend of ours, Karen. Right after Deb's stroke, when she was still in the hospital, life was completely discombobulated, and we were lucky that a bunch of friends organized a meal brigade and did a lot of the things that when you have a good community often happen. And it was great. It was wonderful. And I got an email from Karen who said, hey, and I tear up when I tell this story. She said, hey, I know you and Deb both used to run with your dog pretty much every day. So you may be worried that she's not getting exercise. So unless you tell me not to, I'm going to just swing by and pick her up when I take my dog for a walk so you don't have to worry about it. And I had this unbelievable sense of relief to something I didn't even know I was worried about. And that sort of second order, like, what could people be bothered by that's not on the surface and other people aren't going to think about, was like, it has changed the way, like, whenever somebody I know now gets into trouble, health or otherwise, I remember how that felt for me. And I try to say, okay, what's the equivalent of walking our dog for them? And half the time I can't come up with something, but just so I tell that story because it's such an unusually deep kind of support.
Yes.
And I see you tearing up too, and
I
I'm tearing up.
am, because there's just so many casseroles you can have in your fridge, right? And so it's, people might bring food, and that may be really the only thing that usually we think of in these situations. And there are these other ways, like you said, walking the dog, or there was a lady that one time said that somebody just started planting, her daughter had died, and they planted all these, like without her knowing, started planting flowers in her flower bed. Her daughter's name was Dahlia. And so they started planting dahlias in the front of her yard, like things like that, or picking up, doing the laundry, or I don't know, things that we don't
Yeah.
think of sometimes, and that we could think they are intrusive, but they really are not. They really are thinking beyond the surface level, like you said, of what can be done in these situations. And that is beautiful. And because I have two dogs, so of course you talking about somebody walking your dogs, and that the dog was probably also grieving, like, my life has also changed. I don't get my daily walks anymore.
Yeah.
Hi, I just had to come on and just kind of interrupt right now this episode that you're hearing. Thank you so much. I'm so grateful that you guys are listening to this conversation. And every single time I hear a guest, there's something new that I learn, and something else that ends up showing up within me that I realize I still have to work on. And if by chance, as you're listening to this conversation, you're feeling the same, that there's parts of you that are being stirred up, and you are navigating a life transition right now that feels just heavy and stressful and just layered with grief, I want you to know that you do not have to do it alone. I invite you to connect with me for a free 15-minute discovery call, and we'll explore what's coming up for you and see if working together feels like the right fit. Just check the show notes below for my email and reach out for details. I'd really love to support you in integrating these transitions with more ease and clarity. Can't wait to hear back from you. Okay, let's keep on listening to the episode. So it's been 15 years pretty much. So what has it been then now, and how long into, Debra, into your into your stroke, did you guys develop the nonprofit? And you already had experience with nonprofits, as we mentioned in the beginning. So how did you start Stroke Onward?
Um, 8 years ago.
6.
Yeah. Oh no. No.
It was right when the book came out. So as we
Eight. No, 9.
2019, and it's 2025. So that's 6, I think.
Yeah.
Arithmetic. We argue about arithmetic. But basically, when we were nearing the book's publication date in 2019, we realized we had struck a chord, that Deb, being able to turn her academic expertise around identity on herself and realize how important identity was in recovering from something like stroke, and that we didn't see that any place in all of the recovery journey we had. Other people weren't talking about it. And as we talked to more and more people, it was resonating. People were saying, "Oh my gosh, I felt that way, but nobody's put words to it." And so we, like you said, I did have a background in nonprofits, and all of a sudden it just sort of felt like this is an obvious combination of Deb's academic expertise and the book she led the authorship of, our respective lived experience as a survivor and a care partner, and some background in nonprofits. So like the idea of starting something wasn't intimidating, knew how to do that, that we just sort of thought we should do something. And candidly, when we first launched it, we had pretty modest ideas, that it would just sort of be a vehicle through which we could do speaking and do a little bit more work and advance the book. But being two type A personalities, over the years, our aspirations, we keep growing what we think the organization can do, but not necessarily growing how hard we want to work. In fact, with a first grandkid, we're sort of going the other way. So now we have hired an experienced CEO who's built and led nonprofits before, and a small but mighty team. And basically, we're now really in the process of trying to say, how can we attract more resources so that we can keep growing this effort and make more impact? Because there really is a void in the medical system around this emotional journey in recovery in stroke. Interestingly, other chronic conditions, things that are chronic conditions from the beginning, like ALS and MS, often have
Parkinson's.
more ongoing support for them. But with stroke, because once you bottom out and then you start to recover, you really don't have medical issues anymore that require you to stay connected to the medical system. And yet, for the overwhelming majority of stroke survivors, you have disabilities that are chronic conditions that you will live with for the rest of your life. And so that whole idea of how can we influence the medical system to better support stroke survivors and their families on the emotional journey for the rest of their lives, because they have this chronic condition that they need to live with. And one of the complexities is it's a different chronic condition for everyone. For Deb, she has some physical disabilities, but the most life-changing piece of her stroke is the aphasia.
Yeah.
For others, they may speak fine, but be in a wheelchair. For one of the women who gave a talk at our recent monologue has locked-in syndrome. She can't move from the neck down, can't speak at all, and has to use uh, eye blinks. Her cognition is there, and so with her aids, she uses blinks of the eye to tell the aide what letters are the right letters to spell out what she wants to say. You talk about a laborious process, and yet she's written 7 books,
Wow.
7 short books about her stroke recovery experience. And she wrote a script, which she then used a recorded voice to speak for her in our monologue. Just unbelievably powerful. So that's the
Wow.
kind of work we want to do.
It's so amazing. Now, is it nationwide? Is it just, is it localized? You guys are in California, is that correct?
Yes.
But
So,
it's national. Our staff is virtual all over the country. Staff, 4 people,
yes.
and our biggest effort right now is building an online community that we call the Stroke Onward Community Circle, to try to create a place where survivors, their families, and medical professionals can interact, find community, share ideas, all around this notion of the emotional journey in recovery. And then we do events from time to time in different places around the country.
And
Com-
the international.
Yeah, we
National, yeah.
definitely.
Will even be, yeah. The part of community, the role that community plays in grief and this type of grief is huge, right? As you guys experience yourself with your friends. So the fact that you are now also building community with other people, or at least these people can also find community of others that they can relate to, because it is sometimes when you do not have someone else that's going through something similar, like you feel so alone. So how has it been for you guys as a couple, whichever one of you wants to speak, in terms of relating with others that are going through the similar journey, and how has that impacted and supported your own journey?
I don't. The aphasia is really difficult, and I don't. That Michael and I,
Just
I, I, I am lucky to have friends and partners and family to the uh, bounce off.
Can I jump in?
Yes.
Or go? No, go. Just Deb. A lot of people really find one. A lot of people isolate themselves after stroke, and that means you lose community. And for a lot of people, finding a community of stroke survivors is really important.
Yeah, I agree.
But that really wasn't Deb's journey. She did find some community basically through the physical therapy she was doing,
Yeah.
where she met other people working in the same physical therapy venue. But then I think your biggest investment in getting to know others was when you were writing the book and you interviewed 25 other survivors, and so got to hear people's stories. And then rolling that forward, in 2022, we actually, so bicycle riding has been one of our biggest forms of activity. Deb can't ride a single bike anymore. We were big cyclists before the stroke. Deb can't ride a single bike. We've had a couple of different tandems that we've adapted.
A bike built for two? What's that song? With a bike built to, what is that little
Bicycle
song?
built for two.
Bicycle built for two, yes.
You do not want me to sing. So we ride a slightly adapted tandem, and 3 years ago, we actually led a small group across the country. We rode 4,500 miles from outside of Portland, Oregon to Boston, Massachusetts. And we hosted 16 community events along the way to raise awareness for stroke and for aphasia. And when we talk about that trip, I mean, the cycling was amazing. It was beautiful. We loved it. But the most powerful piece of that trip were those community events and seeing people come together, and how many people said, I feel so alone and I didn't know anybody else was good. It's sort of ironic. 7 million people live in the United States having had a stroke, 7 million survivors. And yet so many of them say, I feel so alone. I didn't know anybody was going through what I'm going through. And I think that just,
That
shows
speaks volumes of what still needs to be done, like you said, right? It speaks, yeah.
And the faces centers all across the world are really discussing the problem, and the virtual, it's really hard to the the rural parts of the country didn't. It's really the problem.
The rural areas are the ones that feel very, yeah. And so the fact that you guys were traveling from one coast to the other and stopping in these little towns of people that they probably were the only ones in their little town that had a stroke at that moment, and feeling so disconnected, you guys could bring this connection throughout as you were in this bike tour across. I love that. Now, what was the reasoning behind doing the second edition of this, and what components were added? Because this is then 5 years later that you then redo the second edition. So, what are the differences between the first edition and the second edition? And should people read it, number one and then two, or is two the one that now is the one around?
The two.
Second one. Okay. So second edition.
Second edition includes most of the first edition. We made a few little minor tweaks, but the big additions were kind of a preface that, in effect, took our personal story up to date, and then 2 chapters at the end of the book, one with sort of 6 or 7 insights that we feel like we've learned about this rebuilding identity, emotional journey, since we wrote the first book, and then a little bit about what we think is needed to create systems change to really help the medical system incorporate this part of recovery. Sometimes we say recovery isn't the same thing as rehabilitation. There is rehabilitation, that's super important. That's getting as much back as you can. But recovery also includes the rebuilding of your identity and a reward, the best possible life you can live in the face of whatever disabilities you still have. And so
Yes. It
we
doesn't
talk.
mean it's not like a fixing component anymore. It's the how do I live with this as
Yeah,
my reality and
yeah,
make it be still fruitful and a life worth living with this reality being,
yeah,
right?
yeah. And the chronics, the the book is the chronic part of the stroke recovery, and
Mhm.
the fascia, no, the medical the uh, uh, mental health is really needed.
Yeah,
The uh, um, uh, 3 pages of mental health.
yeah, just that the mental health professions, whether that be social work or psychology or psychiatry, are just much less present in the stroke recovery realm than in
I
other medical arenas. I mean, they get involved if somebody's clinically depressed or anxiety disorder, but we talk all the time about just it is a massive emotional, psychological change in your life. Even if you're not clinically depressed, everybody needs some help, and
absolutely.
and that's not built into the system, and
It's
that's
just shocking. It's shocking because when you've never been in that, like I did not know that this was the case, that there's not this, psychological support around this and emotional support because I wonder if it happens in so many other things, like if amputees, for example, or things like that, and other people that have debilitating things or, like if they also don't get that emotional and psychological support as well. Wow. Wow. We really do need to reshift the way we do health in our society.
Yeah,
yep.
yeah,
It's
and
shocking.
virtual the AI is so important. It's it's really uh, 3 pages of uh, that in the book.
Yeah. Didn't
Oh,
we
so
kind of,
AI is included in the book.
Yeah,
well,
That
we
was definitely not something 5 years ago when the book
yeah,
came out.
yeah, and we just talk about ways that there a lot of people have a lot of concerns about AI for good reason, and how it's going to shape society, but there are some very concrete ways. Deb is using an AI supported voice replication software to help, speak for her at times when she doesn't have the time to put in to rehearse for a talk. Or there are a bunch of new uh, therapies, therapy technologies that people are finding that use AI around retraining the brain. And where that's a soapbox we get on, which is, Deb's been doing therapy for 15 years and is still improving. And when Deb had the stroke 15 years ago, a lot of the medical profession was saying, all the recovery happens in the first 6 to 12 months. After
mhm,
that, you really can't get better.
Really?
And again, they're confusing recovery with rehab, but even with rehab, there are these new technologies, often AI driven, that are finding that no, yeah, I mean, Deb's exploring one right now that it's called vagus nerve stimulation, where they believe that the brain can relearn better if you're doing therapy while you're having stimulation to a nerve, particularly central nerve in the body. That didn't exist. It's a brand new technology. And so, those are all things that can help people further improve, give them hope, all of
Hope,
which,
yeah. And
all of
hope
which,
is so important. Hope is so important because it just is, it's a driving force in your life as well, right? Every day you have hope of, oh, one more word I'll be able to retrieve faster. One more this, right? There's still, you're holding on to that, and that is something that when you are not given any hope at the beginning of something, it can kind of really affect your process as well, much more than if you are given some hope. The right, it changes it. Thank you both so much. I always like to ask before we wrap up and tell people how they're able to contact you and get the book. Is there something I have not asked that you want to make sure to share with the audience?
No,
I
no.
mean, I guess what I would say is to people in your audience, if you know somebody who's had a stroke or a trauma like stroke, really try to make space and encourage them to engage, even if it's difficult. And for people who have had a stroke or have a speaking disability of some other kind, it feels hugely risky to get out there. But you're not only helping yourself by avoiding that isolation, but you're helping others by educating them and by sharing your story, which is an important story. And so we really, a lot of our work is around trying to help stroke survivors and their families share their story, because we think that's an important step in the process of creating change.
And the stroke circle, no, the stroke, uh, the
Stroke Onward Community Circle.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, just that if you are interested in this topic, particularly if you are a survivor or a family member or a medical professional that believes the profession needs to provide better emotional support to stroke survivors, just we encourage you, and we'll send you the link for your show notes. But to join the Stroke Onward Community Circle, we call it SOC, even though it's a two C's, not a K. But we do have a SOC drawer on the site with resources. But we just encourage you to join the community and help support each other and help drive change.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Steve. Thank you, Deborah, for sharing that. And now, how can people get the book? What's the best way of them getting the book? And then, of course, the in the links, I'll include then your website as well as Stroke Onward.
The Amazon and the Barnes and Noble and uh, 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 the
Well, we have on our website, which is strokeonward.org, there's a section for the book Identity Theft, and we have links to 3 or 4 of the big retailers. It's available at most of them, if not all of them. There's also an audiobook
yes, yeah.
with
Oh, good.
an award winning Julia Whelan, who's an award winning.
Are you kidding me? How did I not know this? Do you know she's my favorite? My favorite.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
got chills. She's like, I do a lot of audiobooks a lot. If I
yeah.
would have known that, I would have heard your book while I was like, I got chills. She's like the best ever.
Well, when we were doing the first edition, Deb, when it was time to think about an audiobook, Deb was listening to Educated, narrated
Oh,
by
she's so
Julia
good.
Whelan,
And that book is so good, and she's just amazing.
and we actually, turns out we had a mutual friend
Yeah.
who she had narrated for, and we got an introduction. So she did both the first book and the second book. And in fact, you may or may not know, she's started a company called Audiobrary, really
Oh
to
no.
promote the art of narrating.
Yeah. Nice.
And she is Audiobrary is distributing our audiobook. So we have a publisher that's distributing the paperback and the ebook, but Julia's new company, Audiobrary, is the distributor for the audiobook.
Oh, please send me the link so that I can include that on here as well, because and I want to hear it, because yes, I normally go on Audible, or I go on the in the library and
So
rent
here is
books
the
that way.
yeah,
I I love it. And I
here.
love that she's doing this, and it's so important. Okay, perfect.
Oh,
Oh, awesome. Yeah, you just
Send you the link,
send me
but
the audio. Okay, I am going to check that out. I love that, and the importance that there is to and in supporting these kind of, as we're talking about AI, there's a lot of benefits to AI, and there's also certain things that certain jobs a lot of times have been affected by it, and voiceovers are one of those. So I am so happy that Julia is creating her own company so that she can also support other people that have the skill of doing these readings for that too. So you saw how excited I got. It was as if like you're like, oh my
yeah.
gosh. Yes, like that is such an amazing, yeah, combination there. So thank you for sharing that again to the audience. Thank you for listening. We had Steve and Debra, and again, all their links will be in the show notes. And for all of you, again, just know that you are not alone. There are people out there that are doing a lot of things that can support you if by chance you are also in this type of journey. So find community and find the support out there to help you with it. So thank you again, Steve and Debra.
thank you.
Bye.
Bye
Thank
bye.
you. Bye. Thank you again so much for choosing to listen today. I hope that you can take away a few nuggets from today's episode that can bring you comfort in your times of grief. If so, it would mean so much to me if you would rate and comment on this episode. And if you feel inspired in some way to share it with someone who may need to hear this, please do so. Also, if you or someone you know has a story of grief and gratitude that should be shared so that others can be inspired as well, please reach out to me. And thanks once again for tuning in to Grief, Gratitude, and the Gray in Between podcast. Have a beautiful day.